الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. Tonight's lesson is on اللؤلؤ والمرجان فيما اتفق عليه الشيخان. In the last class that we did, we were discussing the issue of the number of takbirat to be made in the salah. The number of the takbirat with regards to salat al-janazah. How many takbirs should be made? 4, more or less. We've all seen 4. We've all been to a janazah. We've all prayed over someone that we loved or someone that we knew or a stranger. And in most cases, it was 4 takbirs that the imam made. Is it permissible to do less than 4? And is it permissible to do more than 4? That was the last mas'ala fiqhiyya issue that we were discussing with regards to those ahadith. And we explained some of the khilaf of the ulama and what some of them had to say regarding that. Moving forward, he says, the next issue, after the number of takbirat, is the number of tasleems that you make. 1 or 2. Moving forward, he says, وَاخْتَلَفُوا هَلْ يَجْهَرُ الْإِمَامُ بِالتَّسْلِيمِ أَمْ يُسِرُّ. And another fiqh issue is with regards to saying the taslim out loud or keeping the taslim to yourself. With regards to the imam, aloud or silently. And this goes to show you, as we've explained many times before, the proper way and the systematic way of studying hadith and studying fiqh. And taking one block and chiseling it down and busting it down and breaking it down to smaller pieces, to smaller rocks until you get crumbs, until you get fine, what? Gravel, then dust. Okay, one issue, the Prophet ﷺ prayed upon Najashi. That's the hadith in Bukhari and Muslim. The Messenger of Allah prayed upon this king. Alright? And then from there we branch off. Another fiqh issue, another fiqh issue, and another fiqh issue. We've explained that, how to do that. He says the scholars of Islam, they differ on this. Nawawi rahimahullah says they differ on this. Should the taslim be done aloud or should it be done silently? He says, وَأَبُو حَنِيفَةَ وَالشَّافِعِي يَقُولَانِ يَجْهَرُ وَعَنْ مَالِكٍ رِوَايَتَانِ وَاخْتَلَفُوا فِي رَفْعِ الْأَيْدِي فِي هَذِهِ التَّكْبِيرَاتِ. He says, as far as Abu Hanifa and the Shafi'i rahimahullah, then they said the imam should say it aloud. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. And it shouldn't be done silently. As far as Imam Malik rahimahullah, he says riwayatan. Once he said silently, and once he said to say it out loud. And this goes to show you the diversity of fiqh. The diversity of fiqh. Okay, and that is diverse. And there are different ins and there are different outs. And that the more you study fiqh the proper way, and the more you read the kalam of the salaf and those who came after them, and the more you base your fiqh off the hadith and then branch off, it goes to keeps you out of being narrow-minded and out of being closed-minded. And how it's all connected. Being open-minded and being closed-minded. Even when you talk about fiqh, it's the same brain. You understand this? It's the same entire brain. And the mentality doesn't change. Whether you're talking about any other issue of dawah, whatever you're discussing. If you're closed-minded or if you're what? Open-minded. And how the more you actually read and study the kalam of the ulama, it's going to expand your mind. And no matter what view or opinion or reservation that you have, you'll understand that fiqh is not just one man. Or it's not just 2 men or 4 men or 1 scholar or 1 masjid or 1 city. It's much deeper and greater than that. Moving forward. For this reason, you'll find that the people who are the most closed-minded and the most fanatical are always the weakest in knowledge. And they're always the weakest in their scholastics. And always the weakest in fiqh. And their fiqh doesn't go past Sheikh Fulan's fatwa, Sheikh Fulan's ruling. That's it. Their studies are a reflection upon their mind, and their mind is a reflection of their what? Of their studies. And they try to promote the same to the other people as well. Moving forward. He then says, واختلفوا في رفع الأيدي في هذه التكبيرات ومذهب الشافعي الرفع في جميعها وحكاه ابن المنذر عن ابن عمر وعمر بن عبد العزيز وعطاء وسالم بن عبد الله وقيس بن أبي حازم والزهري والأوزاعي وأحمد وإسحاق واختاره ابن المنذر وقال الثوري وأبو حنيفة وأصحاب الرأي لا يرفع إلا في التكبيرة الأولى وعن مالك 3 روايات الرفع في الجميع وفي الأولى فقط وعدمه في كلها. The next issue is raising the hands during the janazah. Making the takbirat during the janazah. Should you raise your hands or should you keep them down? What do you do? What do you do? We know there's no ruku' in the janazah. There's no coming out of ruku' in the janazah. There's no sujood in the janazah prayer. So what do? The initial takbirah, Allahu Akbar, and then what? Say Allahu Akbar a second time without raising the hands, or raise your hands each and every time you make the takbirah. Similar to Salat al-Eid. Similar to Salat al-Eid. Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, Shafi'i's madhab, rahimahullah, is that the hands should be raised during every single takbirah. Every time you say Allahu Akbar, the hands should be raised. So that could be 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 7 times, depending on how many takbirs you're going to make. He goes on to quote from Ibn al-Mundhir rahimahullah, the great muhaddith who died some 100 years before Nawawi. He says that this there are athar. It's reported that the following ulama used to raise their hands all of the takbirs. From them was Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma, and Umar ibn Abdul Aziz rahimahullah, Ata, Salim ibn Abdullah, Abdullah ibn Qais. He says, Salim ibn Abdullah, Qais ibn Abi Hazim, Zuhri, Al-Awza'i, Imam Ahmad, Imam Ishaq ibn Rahawayah, and it was also the opinion of Ibn al-Mundhir. That's the first view. And the second view was that of Sufyan al-Thawri, rahimahullah, and Abu Hanifa, wa Ashab al-Ra'i, and the jurists of Kufa, the fiqh doctors of Kufa. They said the only time that a person should raise his hands is in the first takbirah. That's it. You say Allahu Akbar, and then Allahu Akbar, without raising the hands, what? Again. That was the view of the ulama of Kufa, Abu Hanifa and others. As far as Imam Malik rahimahullah, then they have thalath riwayat, 3 versions of his view. 3 versions. One version, one time they went to him and they asked him, and he said, raise the hands during every takbirah. A second time they asked him in another country, 10 years later, 3 years later, a different incident, he said the hands should only be raised in the first takbirah. And the third time is that one shouldn't raise the hands, period. The conclusion of all of this is that there's what? There's room. There's room in the issue. If you want to raise them, raise them. And if you don't want to raise them, don't raise them. No need to fight or bite anyone or spit anyone or kick anyone. It's very simple and it's very easy. It's diversity within the sunnah. Moving forward. طيب. Let's go on to the next chapter, inshallah. Marjan, chapter number 23, hadith 559. It says, Babu salati ala al-qabr. Chapter 23 says, offering the funeral prayer over the grave. Offering the funeral prayer over the grave. I.e., what's the ruling on doing this? Can you make the salah in the graveyard? Or is it specific to the place of the salah? Whether that be the masjid or other than the masjid. What is the Islamic ruling on offering prayer in a graveyard? Is it permissible to offer salah in a graveyard? And if it is permissible to do so, then is that an exception to the general rule that prayer is not to be made in the graveyard? As the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, لا تجعلوا بيوتكم مقابر. Don't turn your homes into graveyards. فإن الشيطان ينفر من البيت الذي يقرأ فيه سورة البقرة. أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام. He says, don't turn your house into a graveyard, because shaitan runs from the house in which Surah Al-Baqarah is recited. So, the ruling of the graveyard in prayer, Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah mentioned in Zad al-Ma'ad that the salah and the maqbarah, or the grave and the masjid, they don't mix. It's like the wolf and the sheep. It's like the whale and the desert. They just don't come together. Anytime you see the whale in the desert, sand in a whale, one of the two is going to dominate the other, right? The whale is beached, dead, or the sand is going to be taken over by the water. They just don't mix, correct? So the concept of graves and masjids, and the concept of salah and graveyards, if that's the general rule, is there an exception to this rule? Is it permissible for a person to offer the salah upon a grave at the graveyard? Hadith 559, it says, Hadith ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhuma عن سليمان الشيباني قال سمعت الشعبي قال أخبرني من مر مع النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم على قبر منبوذ فأمهم وصفوا عليه فقلت يا أبا عمرو من حدثك فقال ابن عباس. حديث أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه أن أسود رجلا أو امرأة كان يقوم المسجد فمات ولم يعلم النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بموته فذكره ذات يوم فقال ما فعل ذلك الإنسان؟ قالوا مات يا رسول الله. قال أفلا آذنتموني؟ فقالوا إنه كان كذا وكذا قصته. قال فحقروا شأنه. قال فدلوني على قبره فأتى قبره فصلى عليه. Hadith 559 is narrated by Ibn Abbas رضي الله عنهما that the Prophet ﷺ passed by a grave that was separated from other graves and led the people in the funeral prayer, and the people aligned behind him. Hadith 560 is narrated by Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu. A black person, a male or female, who used to clean the mosque died. The Prophet ﷺ did not know about his death. One day the Prophet ﷺ remembered him and said, what happened to that person? The people replied, O Messenger of Allah's Messenger, he died. He said, why did you not inform me? They said his story was so and so. I regarded him as insignificant. He said, show me his grave. He then went to his grave and offered the funeral prayer for him. And these two hadiths clearly explain what the chapter heading had established. And that is praying on the grave, praying at the grave. If the prayer has not been made upon the deceased Muslim, it is permissible for the people to offer the janazah prayer at the grave, if the prayer has not been established already. That's the main lesson from those two hadiths. Hadith 559 and Hadith 560. An-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, he says regarding this, فيه دليل لمذهب الشافعي وموافقيه في الصلاة على القبور. It says, this clearly proves is that it's permissible to make the prayer upon the grave, as is the view of Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala. Listen carefully to this kalam, and then he says here, وحديث أنس دلالة لمذهب الشافعي وموافقيه في الصلاة على الميت في قبره سواء كان الصلي عليه أم لا، وتأوله أصحاب مالك حيث منعوا الصلاة على القبر بتأويلات باطلة لا فائدة في ذكرها لظهور فسادها والله أعلم. He says here regarding making the prayer on the grave, at the grave, as is the view of Imam Shafi'i and others, and he says regardless whether they made the prayer on that person or not, still permissible. And then he says, as far as some of these students of Imam Malik, then they say a person cannot make salah at the grave, period. And they interpreted that hadith, he says, بِتَأْوِيلَاتٍ بَاطِلَةٍ. All types of fake, false, bogus interpretations. لا فائدة في ذكرها. He says it's of no benefit in mentioning them. And the reason why he says لظهور فسادها, because it's clearly batil. And this once more is another example of the proper way of fiqh and the proper way of a scholar, a student of knowledge, an issue. And that there's no one statement or view or opinion which is sacred, period. And if something is false, it is false, no matter who says it. And there is no respect for falsehood in Islam. Everyone understand this? The way of the Salaf, the way of Ahlul Sunnah, the way of Ahlul Hadith, there is no ihtiram for batil. There's ihtiram for a person who may make a statement of batil. This is a great scholar, we respect him. This is a brother, a student of knowledge, he made a mistake, we respect him. But falsehood is what? Falsehood. And there's no excuse for falsehood. And then something which is muhtamal, it's a possibility. He's not talking about that, because we previously explained that. Shafi'i, Abu Hanifa, he says something what? Ta'wilatin batila. Clear, bogus. Everyone understand this? There is no excuse to be made here. Just because it's Ashab of Malik means what? Nothing. So we should learn from this today. Everyone understand this? If there's a scholar and he makes a statement about someone or a person or a place and it's clearly erroneous, we don't turn a blind eye to something that's erroneous. Everyone understand this? And when who points out something which is erroneous, we don't attack that person and call them bad names and boycott them. Everyone understand this? And then claim to follow what? The ulama and the salaf. That's a disservice to them. Everyone understand this? And it also goes to show you another example of how the asl in fiqh is that you are supposed to stick to the zahirun nas. Zahirun nas. And every Muslim, let alone student of knowledge, let alone alim, is supposed to be by default zahiri. And that is the ruling until proven otherwise. And there is no ta'wil that you make on the zahir al-hadith that has no other dalil stating that. And obviously the same ruling is binding upon the Shafi'is as well. Everyone understand this? And how people, they'll yantasir, they'll use this principle for their madhab when it's convenient. And when it's against their madhab, they'll say what? It's a different interpretation. Everyone fil asl is supposed to be upon that. Everyone understand that? The Prophet ﷺ did not give detail. The Prophet ﷺ did not stipulate this. The Prophet ﷺ did not make a condition. He prayed over the grave. Nuqta. Period. Done. You understand this? And we can't be hypocritical when it comes to being zahiri. When it's convenient for us, we say what? The hadith clearly states that. But when it's inconvenient, there's a madhab that's been passed down, that's muqaddas, that's become holy through time. Then we say, oh, well, yani, it doesn't work like that. Everyone understand this? And people of tradition become very forgetful and oftentimes very hypocritical. And they don't realize, or they lose thought, or they lose track of the reality that a tradition at one point in time was what? How did it become a tradition? Except through what? The one point in time, that view was what? Was new or radical. Everyone understand this? Or going against the older what? Tradition. And this goes to show you the power of time. How just by sheer time, a thing can become holy and sacred. But at one point in time, the people used to do it like this until what? He came. What were the people for Shafi'i? Right or wrong? Then Shafi'i came and he what? Came with his opinions and views. What fiqh did the people have before Abu Hanifa? So it's not so, the 4 Imams didn't take that view. Khalas, you can't go against that. That's what it says who? Everyone understand it says what? It says who? Where was it before them? How was it before them? And when Shafi'i made a view, he was going against a what? Someone else's tradition. He came with his own ijtihad, with his own dalil. Everyone understand this? And the same applies to the people who say, and he used as a dalil, a stone cold dalil, don't talk about an issue in which no one has preceded you in. إياك وأن تتكلم في مسألة ليس لك فيها إمام. First and foremost, this statement is not the statement of the Prophet ﷺ. There are hadiths of the Prophet which are interpreted. There are hadiths of the Prophet which are am and khas. Let alone someone's statement is not even the Prophet ﷺ statement, which is muqaddas. It's not the statement of the Messenger of Allah, nor the Sahaba, Khulafa al-Rashideen, nor the Salaf. It's a statement attributed to Imam Ahmed, rahimahullah. That's first and foremost. Secondly is How do we get the view of Shafi'i, Ahmed, Malik, Abu Hanifa, so on and so forth, except that they did what? Spoke on something that what? No one preceded them in. And they had a dalil. Let alone the fact that when it comes to modern day issues, people, or maybe even a scholar overseas, he'll say, a nazila, a new modern day fiqh issue, إياك وأن تتكلم في مسألة ليس لك فيها إمام. Don't talk about a nation which you have no precedent. How am I going to have a president and a sheikh if it's a what? Makes no sense. And the scholar or the mufti or any other alim that's going to talk about it and make ijtihad, what is he going to do? He's going to what? And he has no what? Shahad al-kalam. Is it me? Where's the aql of the people? He's talking about someone no one has preceded him in because it's something new for 2019. And then another scholar follows him. And then now the student knowledge what? I can make a ruling on it now. After he already did it. Doesn't the kalam Ahmed apply to him as well? So the people's minds, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, as if they're just on pause. As if they just press the button and their engines are off. They're not thinking critically. And this is all from the harms of traditions and people looking at things as being musallamat, that this is acceptable, khalas. And this is summed up in the word the many ulama say al-jumud al-fiqhi, al-jumud, stagnation. And the people just pass down things and they're not what? They're not thinking about it anymore. They're not breaking it down critically, and that's harmful. I'm going to say this is a cornerstone of HadithDisciple, a cornerstone, a pillar of the constitution of HadithDisciple, is there is nothing which is sacred unless it is actually deemed sacred in Kitab and Sunnah, which is Kitab and Sunnah. And the statements and views and how to do it, and this fiqh opinion, this fiqh madhab, anything can have the dust blown off of it. If not what? Have that thing replaced and removed. It's outdated because it was never sacred from the what? From the get-go. Everyone understand this? And Allah Azza wa Jalla has given us common sense as human beings. He's given us the ability to rationalize and to think about things. Everyone understand this? Moving forward. Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, he then says, وفيه بيان ما كان عليه النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم من التواضع والرفق بأمته وتفقد أحوالهم والقيام بحقوقهم والاهتمام بمصالحهم في آخرتهم ودنياهم. And this hadith also goes to show us the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's humility. He says he was a humble man, a humble leader, and he was very gentle with his subjects, and he was concerned about them. And he wanted to know how they were doing. Where's Fulan? Where's such and such? I haven't seen such and such. And how he wanted to look after their rights. And he wanted to make sure that they were doing okay with regards to this life and thereafter. It's beautiful teaching for anyone who wishes to be a leader. It's to humble yourself. It's to be gentle with those who are following you. And it is to check upon them and to make sure that they're doing well. And to make sure that you look after their welfare, spiritual and what? Worldly welfare. Moving forward. قوله صلى الله عليه وسلم أفلا كنتم آذنتموني أي أعلمتموني وفيه دلالة لاستحباب الإعلام بالميت وسبق بيانه. And the Messenger of Allah عليه الصلاة والسلام, when he says, why didn't you tell me that this person had died? It goes to show us the recommendation of informing the people of the death, as we previously explained last week. And that's not from an-na'i, al-manhi an, the impermissible way of calling out someone's virtues when they die, like a eulogy, something like this. A mass text, this brother, such and such brother, he did this, our brother, fulan. La. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brother fulan has died. His janazah is going to be tomorrow at 7 p.m. That's it. Nothing else. Everyone understand this? And people would get carried away, and the shaitan can trick them. And they'll oftentimes, you see it'll slip in. It'll start off with our brother. Then it'll turn into virtuous. Then it will turn into everyone make dua for him because our brother used to do this. And the next thing you know, the shaitan's crept up. And you've been realizing you're mentioning something from the what? The virtues of the deceased Muslim. And that is something that you have to be mindful of. Everyone understand this? Khairan inshaAllah. Going back to the hadiths, we mentioned this hadith about that black person that used to clean the masjid. We did a khutbah on this, walillah alhamd, custodial honor, if I'm not mistaken, the name of it. And we spoke on the fawaid of this hadith. And how many people who talk about race and color in Islam, against it or for it, they don't speak about this hadith. And there are many, many other hadiths as well. Tayyib. And this also goes to show that no one is to be looked down upon. Nobody. For an occupation, he cleans the masjid. For race, Arab versus Desi. For color, somebody from South India versus someone from North India. Light or dark. Or gender. Man is important, but a woman is what? Insignificant. Doesn't matter. And virtue knows no color, age, class, or race. Virtue doesn't know any of these things. Everyone understand this? And many people, they do this. If it's a brother who is someone of knowledge, it's important. The brother who just cleaned the masjid, And that's what the Prophet ﷺ did not want from his companions. He didn't what? He didn't want this from his Sahaba. Khairan, inshaAllah. Let's move forward. Chapter number 24. Babul Qiyami lil Janazah. Standing up for the funeral procession. I.e., another ruling of the janaiz is when the funeral passes by, are you to stand up? Are you to give respect to death or keep sitting down? This is a ruling of Salatul Janaiz. Hadith 561, Hadith Amr ibn Rabi'ah radiyallahu anhu عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال إذا رأيتم الجنازة فقوموا حتى تخلفكم. حديث عمرو بن ربيعة رضي الله عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال إذا رأى أحدكم جنازة فلم يكن ماشيا معها فليقم حتى يخلفها أو تخلفه أو توضع من قبل أو من قبل أن تخلفه. حديث أبي سعيد الخدري رضي الله عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال إذا رأيتم الجنازة فقوموا فمن تبعها فلا يقعد حتى توضع. حديث جابر بن عبد الله رضي الله عنهما قال مرت بنا جنازة فقام لها النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وقمنا به فقلنا يا رسول الله إنها جنازة يهودي قال إذا رأيتم الجنازة فقوموا. حديث سهل بن حنيف وقيس بن سعد رضي الله عنهما عن عبد الرحمن بن أبي ليلى قال كان سهل بن حنيف وقيس بن سعد قاعدين بالقادسية فمروا عليهما بجنازة فقام فقيل لهما إنها من أهل الأرض أي من أهل الذمة فقال إن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم مرت به جنازة فقام فقيل له إنها جنازة يهودي فقال أليست نفسها. طيب, says here, it's narrated by Amr ibn Rabi'ah. The Prophet ﷺ said, whenever you see a funeral procession, stand up till the procession goes ahead of you. Hadith 562 is also narrated by Amr ibn Rabi'ah. The Prophet ﷺ said, if any of you see a funeral procession and he's not going along with it, then he should stand and remain standing till it gets behind it, or it leaves him behind, or the coffin is put down before it goes ahead of him. Hadith 563 is narrated by Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiyallahu anhu. The Prophet ﷺ said, when you see a funeral procession, you should stand up, and whoever accompanies it should not sit till the coffin is put down. Hadith 564 is narrated by Jabir ibn Abdullah radiyallahu anhuma. A funeral procession passed in front of us, and the Prophet ﷺ stood, and we too stood up. He said, O Allah's Messenger, this is the funeral procession of a Jew. He said, whenever you see a funeral procession, you should stand up. Hadith 565 is narrated by Abdurrahman ibn Abi Layla. Sahl ibn Hunayf and Qais ibn Sa'd radiyallahu anhuma were sitting in the city of Qadisiyah. A funeral procession passed in front of them, and they stood up. They were told that the funeral procession was one of the inhabitants of the land, i.e. of a disbeliever, under the protection of Muslims. They said, a funeral procession passed in front of the Prophet ﷺ, and he stood up. When he was told that it was the coffin of a Jew, he said, is he not a human being? Is he not a human being? I'll tell you, all of these hadiths establish one ruling, and that is either the obligation or the recommendation of standing up when you see the janazah procession passing you by. It's either mandatory or recommended based off of those hadiths. Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, listen carefully, he says, وهذا الحديث عند العلماء منسوخ دل الإجماع على نسخه وقد سبق أن ابن عبد البر وغيره نقلوا الإجماع على أنه لا يكبر اليوم إلا أربعا وهذا دليل على أنهم أجمعوا. طيب، إلى أن قال رحمه الله: قال القاضي: اختلف الناس في هذه المسألة، فقال مالك وأبو حنيفة والشافعي: القيام منسوخ، وقال أحمد وإسحاق وابن حبيب وابن الماجشون المالكيان هم خير. قال: واختلفوا في قيام من يشيعها عند القبر، فقال جماعة من الصحابة والسلف: لا يقعد حتى توضع. قالوا: والنسخ إنما هو في قيام من مرت به. وبهذا قال الأوزاعي وأحمد وإسحاق ومحمد بن الحسن. قال: واختلفوا في القيام على القبر حتى تدفن، فكرهه قوم وعمل به آخرون، وروي ذلك عن عثمان وعلي وابن عمر وغيرهم رضي الله عنهم. هذا كلام القاضي. والمشهور في مذهبنا أن القيام ليس مستحبا، قالوا هو منسوخ من حديث علي، واختار المتولي من أصحابنا أنه مستحب، وهذا هو المختار، فيكون الأمر به للندب والقعود بيانا للجواز، ولا يصح دعوى النسخ في مثل هذا، لأن النسخ إنما يكون إذا تعذر الجمع بين الأحاديث ولم يتعذر، والله أعلم. No, he says regarding these hadiths in this issue, quoting from his predecessor, Qadi Iyad, who explained Sahih Muslim, he says that the people differ regarding this issue. They differ. Do you stand up for the janazah or sit down? Is it obligatory, or is it just what? Recommended, or is it cancelled? Mansukh. It once was a ruling. It once was obligatory. It once was recommended, but another hadith came and it did what? Abolished that previous ruling. He says the Nas, they differ on this. They differ on this. View number one, Imam Malik, Abu Hanifa and Shafi'i, they all hold the view that it is mansukh. That you should not, you cannot, you do not stand up anymore. It was once a ruling, but it is what? No longer a ruling. That's the view of those three fuqaha. As far as Imam Ahmed, as far as Ishaq ibn Rahaway, Ibn Habib and Ibn Majishun, two great Maliki disciples, they say, huwa mukhayyarun. A person has the option. You don't have to stand up anymore, but if you want to, you can, and there's nothing wrong with that. Moving forward, those who carry the body and those who are in the procession itself, what is the ruling on that now? When do they sit down? Can they sit down? He says a group of the Sahaba and the Salaf, they said, لا يقعد حتى توضع. No one should sit until the box or the coffin is placed into the ground, or the body without the box. Some states you can't bury someone without a box, a coffin, in the United States. He says, rahimahullah, and the only thing that is abrogated is those who are sitting down and the procession passes them by. That's mansukh. That was once a ruling. So, let's make a scenario now. You're outside the masjid. You're sitting on the masjid steps, and a funeral procession passes you by. They say you don't have to what? Stand up. But if you're in a hearse or in a car or you're walking, you're not allowed to sit down until what? Burial. Until burial. Everyone understand this? And then the other issue is that if you're sitting on the masjid steps and the janazah passes you by, then you what? If you want to stand up, and if what? Alright, everybody clear on this? Moving forward, he says, and that was the view of Imam al-Awza'i, Imam Ahmed, Ishaq ibn Rahaway, and Muhammad ibn Hassan. Obviously, Muhammad ibn Hassan is a Hanafi disciple of Abu Hanifa. He says, قال واختلفوا في القيام على القبر حتى تدفن. Standing over the grave until it's buried. It's another issue. He says that which is well known in the madhab of Imam Shafi'i as standing up is not recommended. And they say it's mansukh, it's cancelled, like we explained. Standing in the procession, when it passes you by, standing over it, kulluhu, it's all what? Mansukh. He says, and there are others from the Shafi'i scholars who say that it is recommended. وَهَذَا هُوَ الْمُخْتَارِ, and that's the view of Nawawi, is that it is not cancelled, it's not abrogated. It's not abrogated. And that it's permissible to do, and it's permissible also to sit down. And it is unlawful to say that it's abrogated. And that's because abrogating a text has to be stipulated that there's no way of harmonizing the texts. In other words, abrogation is one of the final steps. It's one of the what? One of the last steps. And if there's a way of taking the two texts and harmonizing them, we don't say one is mansukh and the other one is nasikh. I'm not saying this. Allah alam. We'll stop here tonight. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala surely knows best.